Jimmy Crut 143 writes, do you always feel pressured to have a title on your pages? I used to feel like I needed a title for every page of my album, but now I'm realizing I don't. If I have good journaling already and embellishments that help tell the story, then sometimes I just don't add a title. I'm slowly learning my own style and way of doing things, and I like how it's turning out. Anyone else with me on titles? Glitter Girl, can you help Jimmy Crut 143 take on titleless treatments?
Of course I can. And I love that your question actually gives us the room to talk about all sorts of different things this week, from developing your own style to journaling on your pages, and of course, creating pages without titles. So I just wanted to bring my supplies out here first and tell you a little bit about my train of thought this week. And that's that I'm going to take some inspiration from a video that was just posted yesterday here at Two Peas in a Bucket, and that's from the In the Mood to Scrap series. Vilna Furstenberg posted her latest video, which includes a mood board and then the tutorial of through her scrapbook page. And what I wanted to do was to highlight that part of your question where you asked about embracing, well, you stated that you are in a stage of really finding your own style and finding your own way to do things. And I wanted to show a little bit of how you can take inspiration from a tutorial or a mood board or anything else that's posted and adapt it to fit your style, because it doesn't have to be a direct copy. And that's what I love about scrapbooking, is that we don't all follow the same pattern. We do our own thing on every page, and that makes our work unique, whether we change things up a little bit or a lot. So I'm starting with supplies, and I took some inspiration both from what Vilna used in her page and from her mood board. So I made some changes to my style. For example, her layout is on a 12 by 12 white cardstock background, and I almost always use pattern papers for my background, so I decided to start there with a pattern. And I have two different sheets for my pattern. I know that in this design, I'm going to be adding my journaling straight to the background paper. So to give me a little help with that, I looked for pages that have lines in the background, and I came up with these two options, which can help basically depending on how big your handwriting is or how much you want to include, because the lines are different size. So this ombre aqua print is from Dear Lizzie Lucky Charm. I have to say this side is beautiful, so if you're liking this B side, you may want to pick up two sheets of this so that you can use both patterns. And then this one is a more distressed aqua, but it's a ledger paper background, but you can see how these edges are a bit cleaner. There's the ombre to the design, but there's not more distressing at the corner, where these have little ink splatters, and, well, not splatters so much as it's just distressed or staining at the edges. So a little bit different, but a very similar type of background. The lines on this one are closer together than the Dear Lizzie. This is from All About a Boy by Echo Park, and it's designed by Lori Whitlock. The other side is this orange bold print. And I just wanted to bring that one to your attention because you may look right over boy collections if you don't tend to scrapbook boy type photos or those kinds of concepts. And there are actually some papers in that collection that are really great versatile papers, and that one is one of them. So that's called Rough and Tough, but I'm going to go with the Dear Lizzie today. But I just wanted to show you both options because those were the decisions that I was thinking through when I made my choice. So I'll put this one to the side for now. So there's the first thing that I'm doing to embrace my style while taking inspiration from someone else's project and mood board. But I also wanted to do a little bit of borrowing some inspiration straight from her layout. So I chose one paper that she used, that Vilna used on her page, and that's this handwritten paper called Remember This from the Maggie Holmes collection for crepe paper. And it's the one that has clouds on the other side. So I'm going to use a little bit of that in my design as well. And then decided I would choose a few more pattern papers to mix the colors. And I had a look at her mood board to see what different sorts of things were pulling her eye. I liked that she had a black and white stripe pattern that was running through her mood board, but I wanted to add a little bit more color to my layout. So I chose a red and white stripe. This is from Sweet Girl by Echo Park. The other side has pie charts. And I wanted to change the black for navy blue. So I brought in this navy blue polka dot from Lucky Charm, which has triangles on the other side. And I might use this navy blue, or I might use this one, which is navy blue with a little pink triangle. But I definitely also wanted to use a little bit of this side, so I'll probably use both sides of this paper. It's called Bright Bauble, and it's also in the Lucky Charm collection. This one just has that lovely faded pink pattern. I started this process by cutting my pattern paper strips, and I cut one that's wider. It's about 4.5 inches, and then the others are all about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, and I have that pink ombre and then 2 sides of this paper, the writing and the clouds. And I cut mine in a little bit different way than Vilna did in hers. Hers, you can't read what the whole writing says because she cut it on the other side, so you just get a little smidgen of handwriting, which I love, but I also just liked the idea of one whole line of writing, so I thought I would cut it that direction and give that a try, and then also the cloud pattern from the background. Then that blue with the pink triangle, that's the reverse of the pink, and the red and white stripe. And then having a look at what Vilna did with her page, I was thinking that I would just take these strips and arrange them here on the side of the page in a very similar way to how Vilna created that border. I've inked all of these edges with brown ink, and I was thinking I would stack them up something like this. And then if I continue to follow Vilna's design, then my photo would go about here. And I had a little thought suddenly that why does the ombre always have to go from the top to the bottom of the page? Why couldn't I turn it, which would then mean turning this strip around, and make this a design that goes along the bottom of the page instead of the side. So that's where I'm going to start with this process, and I'm going to be tucking my photo in to all of those strips and creating some embellishment here, and then lots of writing here. And I know right this second you're going to stop me and say, there was a reason that you had the background paper that way, and it's because the lines go the other direction. And that's very true. So I wanted to stop and see what I wanted to do. Now, there is nothing in the rule book to say I can't write in the opposite direction. So that is option 1. Option 2 is to take all of those strips and place them at the bottom of the page. Then my word my word strips, my writing strips, the lines for the writing, they're going the right direction. But I have lost the majority of the ombre tone to the page. So at this point, I just have to make a choice, and whatever I decide, I'm going to stick with it and go ahead and stick everything down so that I can get started with all the embellishment and the writing. With my papers layered at the bottom of the page, and I basically decided I would go ahead and keep the lines on the horizontal, but I would move things down a little bit more, so it's not taking up quite as much of the page as I originally planned, so that you can see a little bit more of the fade. And now I'm going to start adding my embellishments. Now I have this line of text running across here, but I don't really want that to become a title for the whole page, so I don't mind if I cover part of it up. And I'm going to start with my largest embellishment and build the smaller embellishments around it. So I'm going to start with that camera die cut, and then I can look for places to overlap different embellishments with similar and different shapes, just balancing different things. So there's a rectangle shape to the overall camera, but there's a circle design here in the middle to make the lens, and I can take a circle sticker and overlap that on the corner to create a little bit more balance in that embellishment, to put those two shapes together so that they read as a sort of figure 8 type look. Then I can start to carry that across the page. Now in Vilna's design, because she was working on the vertical, she did her embellishment all down on one column, and what I want to do, because I've twisted this look, is to take it on the diagonal so that it starts at the top of the page and follows the direction that you read, essentially, so that you'll start with the embellishment and the photo, you'll read the journaling along to the side, and then you'll carry the embellishment down to the bottom corner of the page. So I want to build up different embellishments, and I really like this sticker, but I think it's one of the harder pieces to fit into this design. So I'm thinking I could tuck the little cityscape behind this edge of the paper, and then I can balance with some rectangles and some circles and maybe tuck this into another layer of the pattern paper. And then take that embellishment up here on the diagonal, and to include the photo, then I could tuck different pieces behind the picture here. And lay some pieces on top and some underneath to create that loose line of embellishments on the diagonal across the page. Now I also had the little speech bubble with the heart, and if speech bubbles are not your style, you could totally make this into an oval just by taking off the little triangle piece that makes it into a speech bubble. And normally I laugh when I see speech bubbles with photos, because that's kind of how I first started scrapbooking before I knew what scrapbooking was a word, that scrapbooking was a whole idea, was that I had books from school with photos, sort of like taking an edited version of my own school yearbook, and I would write in bubble captions on all the photos and add silly things that when I was 13 I thought were really funny, and now I tend to look at them and think that they're a little bit cringeworthy, but that's 13-year-old life, isn't it? And I just thought, for some reason, the setup of this picture and the fact that it's a little bit of a funny pose, and the whole idea of trying to get a picture in the mirror with my iPhone, it is very much, if I were 13 now, that's probably what I would be doing. And so I thought this embellishment can work here with the photo in that right sense of humor. And obviously I'm not taking it completely seriously. And so if you have that sort of non-serious page, that might be something to think about. And just, I like to look at the different kind of meanings you can get, the layers of meaning that can come from an embellishment. So something that actually seems so simple but has a lot more meaning to it. So I'll go ahead and start sticking down all these layers. And this is very much just a stick and commit as you go, because I can come back in with more embellishments. I think I'll come back in with some things that are smaller, some little label stickers perhaps, and definitely something like enamel dots or gems, anything like that. And let's see, how about this skyline sticker? And I can run a little bit of ink around the edge of this to keep it more consistent with the other pieces on the page. So while Yes Please is a very clean watercolored collection with plenty of white, I can just give it that little bit of ink to help it work with all these distressed papers. A couple of these little borders, if you see it very in much detail, I'm not sure how much you can see in the video, but in addition to inking the edges of these papers, I also just ran my scissors along a few little pieces of the design, not the whole strip, but you can see just here and here, just to give it a little bit more texture. And that was a case of taking inspiration from Vilna's style, because she tends to have lovely distressed pieces to her pages. And I used to do a lot of these distressed edges, and I haven't done any lately. And sometimes just seeing something on someone else's pages can remind you of something that you used to do in your work and you haven't tried for a while. So it can work out as a nice reminder. So sometimes you're trying something completely new. Sometimes you're revisiting something that you just ignored lately. So I'm just trying to tuck these into different layers of the paper. So the stripes, the city goes behind the stripes, the circle behind the pink, the grid behind the blue, just to give that bit more layering and dimension and all those things. Okay. So now I can stop where I am with the design and get all my writing in. So this is a slightly different technique than what Vilna used, because I very much commit and glue as I go. And if you want to have a little bit a cleaner page, the chance to stop and start a little bit more. You could work out where those pieces were going to go and then pencil a line around so you would know where you could write and you could take them all off the page. And that's what Vilna does in her latest video. But I'm going to go ahead and leave them there and add my writing now. And then I'm going to come back and add a little bit more embellishment to make sure I'm telling everything I want in the story, and also just to make sure I like how it looks. When it comes to handwriting on your page, I know there are plenty of scrapbookers out there who like the idea or understand the concept of including your writing on your pages because it will mean something to other people. And I think it means more and more as we write by hand less and less. But I totally understand the challenges that it brings when you're not confident with your own writing. And I just want to encourage you to keep trying and keep practicing, even if it means that most of your journaling gets tucked away as another layer on the page because you're not so comfortable with it as part of your design. But work toward it. And please know that my handwriting didn't magically just look like this one day. If you go back to my school papers, my handwriting was atrocious in school, and in fact, I had a teacher who was very, very strict and told me my writing would never be legible. And I've told the story of her strict handwriting lessons many times. And it was only as an adult when I wasn't happy with my writing on my own scrapbook pages, I felt it didn't look and it just didn't fit the way I was scrapbooking, and it seemed like as soon as I started to write on a page my hands would freeze, and I wrote in a really robotic way that didn't look anything like how I would write normally because I was so nervous. So I started practicing one letter at a time, just wrote A's all day long and looked at other people's writing and thought, oh, I like this A, I don't like that A, and learned what I liked and then would practice over and over again. And just this sort of doodling that you can do while you're doing something else, really simple to do. And once you're happy with a letter and can create it time and time again, move on to a different letter. And don't feel that you have to go in alphabetical order. Go with the letters that maybe your initials or the initials of people in your family, or look at whole words that you tend to write a lot, maybe days of the week and months of the year, or names of people, or any sort of thing that you find that you return to over and again. And that way you get more practice at making those words that really mean something to you look the way you want. And just don't give up. Maybe your handwriting will be on more of your pages sooner than you know it. So I now have my writing in place, and there's not a title, and I'm not going to add one, but I have added lots of embellishment. And I love the way that you phrased your question this week, because the reason that you said you're quite happy without having titles is because you're telling a story through the journaling and the embellishment. And that it was my initial thought. As soon as I saw the idea of a subject line that said, what about pages without titles? Or do you feel pages don't need titles? My worry was, does that mean there's no journaling at all? Because what I tend to do is really consider my title to be part of the journaling. And you'll see that sometimes my titles maybe even seem a little bit obscure or strange, but it's normally because they then feed into the journaling and hopefully make sense all together, and you read the title into the rest of the page. And that's something that I really like about using titles, and that for me is more useful than a title where I'm trying to figure out, what's a catchy way to explain this, and then I don't get caught up in that idea of different little catchphrases and things. And just adding some little enamel dots to give this a bit of movement down the page. And let's see, need something down in this bottom corner. Maybe one of the larger green dots would be a good way to bring that color through here, and then a tiny one in the gray and a bit of the pink as well. Just lots of dots. That's okay. And if you don't like the idea of all enamel dots, you could do the same sort of effect with ink splatters. Just do little droplets of ink along the page so that you get that movement that flows along the way. But yes, I was really glad to see that your idea of pages without titles could really work because you're already telling the story. And you'll see that I tend toward embellishments that use words. And the other two sets of embellishments that I brought out, they also are word-based. And it's these label stickers, which also includes lots of word blocks from the Maggie Holmes crepe paper collection. And then these little oblong circles, imperfect circles, from Studio Calico's Sundrifter collection. And I just want to scatter a few of these into the design along that line. So I wanted to bring up something here to this top corner to bring the design all the way from corner to corner on the page. And then I'll just choose two more of those to scatter along so that I have that continuity from the top to the bottom. But I don't need them all to be geotags. I can choose different pieces from the sheet. So I just continued adding a few little pieces to that loose line of embellishments, and that's definitely a design that you can take and adapt to your style. You can add lots and lots of embellishment, or you can take it back and not have as much. So hopefully this is kind of a happy medium. You might like a lot more, you might like a lot less. And what I tried to do was repeat colors and shapes throughout. So you'll see not only do the enamel dots repeat throughout that line, but also shapes like these oblong circles in the pink, and colors like the navy blue that appears up here, then in this stripe and in this strip as well. So taking a few of those colors and repeating them a few times to bring together all of that. And that way I can still use things like something that's quite clean and modern and something that's a bit more distressed and vintage and work them together because of similar shapes and colors. Now I want just one last finishing touch, and for that I'm going to be using the Amy Tangerine phrase stamper. So this works just like the rolling date stamps, except it's just phrases. And one of them is actually a date that's blank. It just says date and has two dividing lines. And that way, if you're from part of the world that writes the date in the opposite direction to how the other stamps are set up, then this stamp is good for you because you can just write in the dates. But it also has lots of different phrases that you can just add to your page really simply, because you can just ink and stamp the phrase wherever you want it to go as a nice little addition at the last minute. So I'm just doing this in the same color of ink that I used for the edges, because I didn't want it to be super obvious. I wanted it to be a bit more subtle. Now find one last phrase for the bottom corner. So everything here is getting repeated 3 times. So your challenge this week is to create a page that does not have an obvious title. It might be that you end up in your design with all sorts of words, but none of them is a giant title that you sat down and figured out where you're going to put it, and you got out your die cut letters or your letter stickers or giant stamps and stamped it out. So you might still have plenty of words on the page, but the overall design doesn't include an obvious title. And if you want to take a page out of this challenge, you could go along to In the Mood to Scrap and choose one of the mood boards that's been posted there by different garden girls and see how they inspire you. You might make a direct scrap lift, or you might just take a little bit of inspiration. And do have a look at Vilna's page from yesterday, and you'll see in the end result how our 2 pages fit our different styles, even though I took a little bit of inspiration from the same ideas that she started and shared in her video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at twopiesinAbucket.com.